Hey everyone. Today I'm gonna walk you through what is in my Claude.md file when I'm working with Claude Code. This is an overview and a deep dive on how I structured this file. These are my personal instructions, meaning they work for my use cases personally. And these are mostly for inspiration, so feel free to reuse some of these. It doesn't mean that they're gonna work for every use case and for every instance. For example, some people would opt for a much shorter and concise way of instruction. I'm more structured type of person to really bring out the key uh, I would say guidelines, and this is how it is designed. So basically, what you see here, you have the table of contents to really clarify what it contains and how it's structured and easily find the key instruction and guidelines. So one, we have the working directory. Two, we have the preferences that we use, including the design system. So this is what helps me basically keep a consistent styling guide in terms of color palette, font styling, structure, buttons, etc. We have also the data schema that keeps something very consistent across the projects. Same when it comes to the change management, meaning to which extent Claude Code will have the liberty to apply certain changes and in which ways they need an approval and in which ways basically they cannot do anything without sharing their plan and asking for those permissions. How do we track the milestones? What are the commit rules? What are the custom slash commands? So we keep track of those. So there is no, for example, duplicates. Same goes with how to create the documents. And for me, the most useful parts are the port allocation to keep track for my servers and the apps I use locally as references and the common commands that we have. So if we take, for example, the design system, it's available in its own folder. Same for the references as like live demos, the production CSS files, the legacy support, the Tailwind config, etc. All of those are in there. Same for example, the typography, the primary font, the monospace, the font scaling, my favorite color palette that I usually use for my designs, the dark mode default, for example, under the design features. And then we have data schema to give that like the examples where these are the references. So we don't have any random ways to bring those out. Then we have components and how to use them in those examples. The data schema itself, use TypeScript interfaces, document API requests, maintain database, and so on. And this is a key part that I spent some time to finalize it, which is the change management. So basically, what it says is all change to this Claude.md file require explicit discussion and approval before implementation. And the change process is basically proposing the change, discussing it, approving it, and then implementation, and then validation. The validation with, for example, some loop with certain MCPs for visual designs or other agents to make sure that they are applying to those instruction. For example, configuration updates or workflow modification or template changes, etc. All of those will be required. In terms of milestones, be it for the environment optimization, the documentation, etc., there is like codes and basically visual indicators with emojis, and the obviously the commit rules with the different types here, the bug fixes, the new features, the tooling, the work in progress, etc. The process itself, And then the roles. So here I basically created a set of roles with their specific tasks and responsibilities. For example, the PM, does this deliver the promised value? Will users benefit from this change? Does it align with the product goals, etc., to make sure that we are in line? And you can see I have 6, 7 different roles in there with the number of principal, including the slash commands, the steps. So basically, it replicates what worked, and even when there was a set of errors or mistakes or bugs, it revised those and integrate them back into the commands and guidelines here, so that the next time we don't go over the same mistakes again and again. Um, Always getting some examples here to really specify how it should work. The documentation itself, brief 1 to paragraph overview explaining the purpose, how to use it, if there's any APIs involved, the components, etc. So that's the structure of the documentation I'd like to have. Same with the process. I have my allocation all basically lined up, so we don't create another port where it has been already used somewhere. The features, also in terms of examples, and it goes that way in quite a long time so far. And let's see if we have other things that, in terms of commands, you can see it here, that I'm using personally on my instances. And basically, that's the full, I would say, structure. So if we go back to the top itself, you can see here it's a dozen of key categories: the working directory, the preferences, the design system that basically for every single project it keeps the consistent layout, UI, and UX, the tracking, the documentation itself, and the port allocation. So this is it in a very short way. Let me know your thoughts. If you have a different way of using it, happy to get inspired from your work. And see you in the next video.